Hey everyone, welcome back to the Full Coat. Today's video is going to be all about last night's Tottenham Hotspur versus RZ game. The result is exactly what we want. There were large parts of that performance that were very positive, lots of things that we can take away from that and be excited about as Spurs fans, and I'm sure you all know what I'm referring to, and some other bits and pieces that we'll look into and we'll unpick. General themes from the game. I think that one of the key things for me that has always been lacking when we play in the lesser European competitions is that Tottenham are caught betwixt and between in terms of who we select, who plays, the drop off in performance when we make lots of changes, even sometimes when we used to make a few changes and then inevitably not getting results. Now that was particularly away from home. We've got a terrible Europa League record away from home. But at the moment, I think we're seeing a step forward, perhaps two steps forwards in terms of where we were last season and where we are this season. It's a very common thing. You see managers that come in and they've inherited the large bulk of the players and the squad, and they trust a very small group of starters and they don't go outside that. And we as fans are like, why don't you play the youngsters? Why don't you play this guy? Why don't you try this system? Why don't you change this? But managers have also got to manage their own jobs and their own livelihoods and stay in and do the best they can to get the results they need. And I think last season Ange did make lots of changes in the Fulham game. It stung us because we didn't quite get over the line, despite obviously it going all the way to penalties in an away game against the Premier League side. And that kind of thing means that you are less likely to trust those players because you just don't have the time. We had so few games last season and then only a couple of cup games. There was really no time for rotation. So it was strongest team all the time, no one else coming through. And again, when we were making changes, it didn't look like it made a big difference. I think we're in a very, very different place. And I've said this on some other videos. If you look at the squad that we've got, despite so many youngsters, it feels like the coaching staff do trust these youngsters. They are giving them the minutes. They are putting them in these games. And they're exactly the right games you want to give them. You want to give them this opportunity to kind of improve and learn and get plenty of minutes. But they're also getting a bit of an education. It's slightly different to Premier League. So they are going to need Premier League minutes to then be effective in the Premier League. But we are putting more and more people out there. And the important thing is the step forward element is we're getting the job done. We're getting the results. So it's another victory. It was relatively comfortable throughout. In fact, in terms of chances created against us, there were very, very few. And even when they were, we actually dealt with them quite well. And again, I think in terms of pressure from the opposition, it was quite limited opposition in RZ. The only time that they really showed anything was when we shot ourselves in the foot, which again is one of those things that you could mitigate it by saying these players haven't had lots of minutes, they're not match fit, they're not sharp, they're not in rhythm and tempo. But there's really no excuse for it. We've got to cut out those errors. So if we then want to take another step forward, that's the element we're going to be looking at, right? That's another really big one, is stop shooting ourselves in the foot. Stop making it easy for oppositions to get in, because better oppositions will punish us, whereas RZ last night showed that they couldn't quite do that. So if we kind of look through, one of the big talking points from the first half is obviously the decision to play Timo. And again, I think it's the right decision. So Odobert was just coming back from an injury. I don't think you would start him. And we knew that Sonny, having come back from an injury and played on the weekend, wasn't going to feature. So playing Timo was exactly the right thing to do. Okay, it moved Mikey out to the right-hand side where he looked less effective. But it's one of those things where you feel like the coaches are desperately trying to get Timo a goal, get him some confidence, give him the minutes he needs. But at the minute, he's just in a hole. He really does look completely devoid of confidence. Despite he's had pockets in games where he's beat his man, he's played well, he's got him behind, particularly in the Europa League. And again, he was doing okay. You can see his touch isn't quite there. Everything looks a bit laboured and a bit difficult for him. But then he has a moment where he cuts inside and swings a beautiful ball. He looks up and he spots that he's got both Richarlison attacking down the middle, and then he's got Mikey Moore coming in on the blind side at the far post. And he swings a ball so he can really whip through it and hit it as hard as he likes, because if he slightly underhits it, it's Richarlison's ball. If he catches it on the full, it's probably going to be chased in by Moore. Moore gets across, and on the goal side of his defender, he does all the right things, but then doesn't quite get the purchase on it. He should do a bit better. I'm not sure it's his natural game scoring headers, but still, that's not a difficult chance. The defender gives him, bodies him and gives him a nudge. But he should get more of a contact onto it and probably just steer it inside that far post. But Werner did that bit well, but everything else really, really didn't work from him. There's, an absolutely fantastic outside of the boot ball from Berrival through to him, puts him away, and it's a lovely run, right? So this is Werner, often criticised for being offside, a wonderful spin run, a real classic that you would teach kids from a young age to make this. Where he's wide, spins, darts inwards, so he's running laterally, so he stays onside, and then he's in with his pace. He's in acres and acres and acres. The ball is perfect, and then just such a soft finish. He goes to side foot it again. I'm not sure, kind of a flat punch side foot finish is what you're looking for there. I really want him to be aggressive and whip that towards that far post. Obviously, he's not got the confidence at the minute to give the goalkeeper the eyes and then whip it inside the near. But I just want to see him really, really wind that inside that far post. And if you miss, you miss. But in his current confidence situation, I'd much rather he really tries to bang through that with the side foot rather than, not with the laces. Bang through it with your side foot, see what happens, because that tame finish is even worse. Just rolling it into the goalkeeper's hands with no threat whatsoever is exactly like he's done in previous games against United, and it's not done his confidence any good. And then he had another chance where the ball's it's a much more difficult chance, but the ball's played out wide. It's pushed him out wide. He's on his left foot. He's tried to hit it hard with his left foot, and it goes up and inside netting. It's not. It just feels like at the minute everything he does is a real labour, and you almost feel like he's going to have to be lucky to get that goal. It's going to have to be one of those where he finds himself completely unmarked at the back post, and it's and it's not even bobbling. Like, it's running smoothly across the penalty box, and he can just tap it in, or like an instinctive poke out a foot finish for him to get anything. So Timo is really, really struggling, and for once trying to play him into confidence. It feels that 45 minutes and then getting taken off at half time, and the improvement that we saw in the second half, it has probably not helped him. So that may or may not be a step back for him, but it feels like a really difficult time for him, and it's a shame, because he's a good lad, he's a good trainer, he's a good member of the squad, but he's not performing. And at the end of the day, we need to look at it for the good of the club and the good of the team. And right now, it doesn't feel like the Timo season 2 option has particularly worked for us. So we'll see what happens with that with January around the corner. We were largely in control in the first half. Maddison did well, and he shows that against these kind of slightly more limited oppositions and these defensive oppositions, he can actually do a bit of the defensive work as well. He gets around, he's buzzing around, he can win the ball back. There's one particular moment where I think it was the second half, but he tackled he tackled Troy Parrott, and it felt good about that as well. And Troy Parrott obviously wouldn't. But Manners had a good half. The player that deserves a mention, he deserves a mention from minute 1 all the way through, is Fraser Forster. In the first half, just to compound on Timo's issues, he plays a terrible ball into midfield that allows RZ to break. One of several times where we are the architects of our own downfall. They go on the attack, the ball's played through, and Fraser Forster comes steaming out of his box. I think we all held our breath. We were all watching thinking, what's going to happen here? but he was off his line quickly. He timed it brilliantly, and he did really well. He's got his hands there just in case, but he gets his chest in the way, gets his frame in the way, and he's able to get that ball away, and we're back in possession. Fraser Forster has come in for lots and lots of criticism from the Tottenham fan base, and he now deserves his props. This is what we should be doing as a fan base. We can see the limitations. We can see he's no Vicario in terms of his athleticism, but he's come in and he's had an absolutely brilliant game. In the first half, he made a really good save from a set piece, ball over. Good header. It's not right in the corner, but still, that could beat some goalkeepers. But he's a big lad, Forster. Gets across, goes with his top arm, and it's a good save. And then he gets himself up for the rebound very well. That saving Timo was brilliant. And then throughout the course of the game, he saved us a couple of other times. Ben Davies in the second half has another one where, pops it up off his chest. He's not strong enough. The player plays through him. They're in, and Forster makes a good save. It's a decent save. So all of these things, we can be constructively critical, but we've also got to hand out the flowers when it's time. And I thought Forster was really, really good last night. So he deserves credit for that. Then if we move it into the second half, Brennan Johnson comes on. Mikey Moore moves back to the left, which I think at the minute is where he's far, far more comfortable, coming in off the left on his right foot, which is great in terms of an option to take minutes off Son, which is what I think he needs. And yeah, as Madder said in his post-match interview, for 20 minutes he was absolutely electric. He was on fire. I think he went out there with the instructions from the coaching staff to be braver, which we didn't really see in the first half. It was all very safe. Receiving the ball, he never threatened on the outside. He would then slow it down, stop, come back inside. There's a couple of times where he looked as if he was going to have a little drive and then decided against it and went for the safe option. I think he probably had the coaches ringing in his ears. And in the second half, for a long while, every time he received the ball, he was looking to drive. He was looking to commit players. And, when the first one comes off, and it was a really, really good one as well, taking on several players, it just builds that confidence. You do it again and again and again. He is technically a very, very talented player, and his growth and his development is going to be all about identifying the situations that you need to have that kind of aggressive 1v1 take on nature, and the times where actually you need to quickly recycle the ball but not slow it down. You're going to need to really keep that tempo up and keep the passing rhythm. He's got the ability, he's got the talent. The other element is obviously the finish. We've seen it in youth football. We've seen he's got a finish on him. Loads of different types of finish as well inside the box. But yeah, if you're playing on that left-hand side, the ability to cut in onto your right foot and bend one, we want to see that. And then, the finish that I love, which is looking as if you're going to bend it. The keeper takes that first half step to cover the second post, and then you reverse it in the Harry Kane finish. You reverse it into that near post. So I want to see him work on all of that. He had one effort, fairly tame. Again, didn't really get through the ball. And, it was easy for the goalkeeper. But he was absolutely sensational, and rightly so. We as Tottenham fans, a lad coming through our academies, another one of our own. And we should be really proud, and we should get behind him. But with respect, he shouldn't be starting every single game. He shouldn't be given 90 plus minutes in every single game. We shouldn't put that on his head. Manage him carefully, manage him well, and there's a potential superstar in there. And I believe we've got a young up and coming team where he can grow as everyone grows together. So yeah, reasons to be excited. He was fantastic. The ball he played to Brennan Johnson for, I think Johnson's first touch was a really, really classic kind of Johnson from the right strike back towards the second post. And a beautiful ball from Mikey Moore to put him away, and it just clipped the defender's heel and spun away, which was a shame, because it would have been a beautiful goal after Mikey Moore just taken on seemingly half the RZ team. Then we get to the goal, a straight ball through from the middle of the pitch, just a straight ball over the top. We tried it a few times. There was a couple. Dragushin did a few. There was one that kind of skipped off the surface in the first half. There was one that Madders did collect, and then I thought probably at least 0.75 of a penalty when the defender goes to ground with his near leg, goes through Maddison's standing foot, does get the tiniest touch on the ball. He does get a toe on the ball, but I feel like the touch on the ball is after significant contact. I think Clive Allen in commentary actually went a bit early on saying that Maddison's going down before the contact. I think the contact's starting to bring him down and then the player gets the ball. But anyway, it's one of those that if you get away with it, you say, well, never a penalty, he gets a toe on it. But, you know, if it's roles reversed, I'm sure RZ would have wanted that as a penalty. So anyway, we tried that ball a few times. It looked like it could be successful. It looked like it could lead to something, and it did eventually. Really good because Berryvale had pushed up high, and good to see that, good confidence. Maddison actually brings the ball down because the ball flies in over the centre half and arrives at Maddison. And his touch pushes it to the right and actually into the path of Berryvale. And as Berryvale's pulling his leg back and starts to initiate the shot, the defender kind of bundles into him, comes across him, makes contact. It's a penalty. There weren't any arguments, I don't think. And that led to the whole situation, you know, with Richie now on the pitch, where Madders and Richie having a long discussion about the penalty. Richie saying, you know, please give it to me, I need this. Madders saying, I want this as well, and he was the senior player. I've got absolutely no issue with players on the pitch deciding who's taking a pen. You know, sometimes a player might not be feeling it, might not be wanting to take a pen and hand it over to somebody else. All of those kind of things, you sort it out. But as I always say, football, especially at the elite level, just like so much else, is about consequences. You make decisions and then you are responsible for the outcome of that decision. So if Madders hands that ball on to Richie and Richie misses it, then that whole sketch of those two having an argument over it is a really disappointing episode. So you go back in and, you know, you deal with that as a coaching staff. Whereas when it goes in, I think as Ange said in his post-match, you don't really care. The ball's got to end up in the back of the net. If you've got two people super confident that they can put the ball in the net, it's not a great look. No, I don't think anybody enjoys it. Slightly embarrassing pushing and shoving for a pen. Should all be decided beforehand. But you get to a situation where that ball has to go in the net. And Madders' decision was a captain's decision. No matter, you know, what people think about the amount of time he had to think about things, I think he just had a little think of it while he was standing there. He's like, look, if he scores, it's going to be good for him. I think post incident, he's probably been able to rationalise it and think about what he'd say about the incident. But he probably has thought, yeah, give it to Richie, because if he scores, it'll be good for him. You know, that flash thought. He did it. He hands it over. Richie, lovely penalty, little drop step, and then just clips it down the middle because he saw on the drop step that the keeper flinched, so he was going to go. And yeah, a really, really lovely penalty. 1-0, deserved 1-0. We were dominating at this point in the second half. And Maddison doing captain things. So he had made a break from midfield. He'd taken control. He brought that ball down, which led to the penalty. And then he made a captain's decision. He handed it over and it worked out. So all of those things, good to see from one of the club's vice-captains who was captain on the night. I think you've got a situation where in the second half, after about 20 minutes, again, we kind of settled down. We always seem to do this around the 60, 65 minute mark. We settled down a little bit and the intensity faded, but we remained in control. And I think we need to give a shout out to Lolo here because he was absolutely fantastic all night long. He only lost the ball once. There's one little turn later on in the game where he had maybe 3 or 4 players around him. I think it was a little triangle had cornered him, and he tries to do a little Cruyff turn and it doesn't quite come off. But again, he was phenomenal all game long. He actually saved Radu's blushes at one point defensively, charging in and getting back. There was a couple of occasions again in the first half with him charging back and some quite physical play in the box, I think on Poku, and but us coming away with the ball, and all game he kept it ticking over. He received possession, he moved the ball about, he did his defensive duties, just a very, very good game. And I know that RZ is not the hardest team we're going to face, but we know that Bente is going to get lots of minutes on Thursday nights for the moment. So great to see. He just played really, really well. And, you know, it was a fantastic performance from him. I think there was a moment where we were making the subs and I could see, it was just a humorous moment where you can see that Vicario on the sideline came across, and for a second I can see Vicario handing out instructions and talking and pointing, and in my mind I just assumed he was one of the coaching staff. And then obviously I'm thinking about it, I'm thinking, what on earth? Vicario, okay, fine, Vicario the coach. But it is symptomatic of his growing voice in the squad and with the team. It's not a surprise he's been made one of the vice captains, because you can see that. You can see more of that intervention. And so it's good. You want a dominant goalkeeper. You want a goalkeeper who really does rally his players and gets involved with his players. And if he can bring into his personal performances some of those improvements that we want to see from him, then, you know, potentially we've got a long future with this guy, doing all the things that you want from a top level goalkeeper. So anyway, that made me chuckle. I think if we look at the defence, Ben Davies did okay. He didn't have a great deal to do. He did okay. He had that one moment where he gets knocked off the ball that we mentioned that Forster digs us out. Radu is an interesting one after all the talk in the week from his agent. And I don't know how helpful his agent is to Radu's performances. I felt he had a pretty rocky game all the way through to the end, but then he had some good moments towards the end. He had one late on where they did manage to break in down the left-hand side and they were just about to cut the ball back, and he read it and he got in and he slid in and he blocked that ball across the near post. He can do some of the aggressive stuff really well. He clearly prides himself on that kind of stuff and, you know, being super tough and super aggressive, a little bit more Romero-like than Van de Ven-like. But he didn't look comfortable. His passing doesn't look crisp. When it is, you know, the stuff moving laterally around the back or into midfield, he looks slightly limited. But again, that might just be rhythm and tempo from not playing, so that's legitimate. His long ball game is great. We saw it in the compilations before we signed him. You know, he's got a great switch of play. He's got good long ball. He's got a big leg on him. So that's great, and that's a good option to have. And as we said, it worked in our favour a couple of times. But yeah, again, he makes his own mistakes. That makes it really, really hard to justify all his agent's noise about not getting minutes when he comes in and he makes mistakes. He got himself a red card in the previous game at home, and again today he makes a mistake. You know, physical, could it have been a foul maybe, but just out muscle two players, nick the ball, they get in. And I think Lolo comes in and saves his blushes on that one where he gets in and just gets a block on the shot. So a very mixed bag from Radu, and I think he needs minutes. He needs to play. That's fine, but obviously don't shoot yourself in the foot by making mistakes and getting red cards that then put you out of the next game, limiting your own minutes. And then when you are in there, you've got to take it. I thought he was really good when he played against Newcastle. I don't think he's looked that good in the Europa League so far, and last night was a very mixed bag for him. Some good stuff, and then some stuff that definitely needs working on. So I think it's almost, if it was the player talking, you'd say I'd rather you shut your mouth and you just focused on playing, but the player doesn't say anything. He probably does just knuckle down and do that, and we don't know how much of it is Radu talking through his agent, if any, or if he's just got a very mouthy agent, which I think is the case anyway. But yeah, we'd from the general Dragushin camp, less noise, more playing, get on with it. You're a talented boy, and I'm excited to see what you can do. But if the personality doesn't fit, and if he's not happy and he needs to move on, I think we're now in a state as a club where we could probably get all of our money and maybe make a profit on him. And I trust in the recruitment process that there's someone else out there that we would have identified to come in. So, let's see what happens with him. I think we made a few more changes. Decky coming on provided a little bit of stability, and in fact he had a chance later on in the game, which we maybe could have done a bit better with. Udogie as well. Udogie got lucky, so he had a fairly good game, a fairly solid game. It's a shame we haven't got a rotation option for him to give him some rest, but yeah, he was doing okay until the end, where again there was just defensive instincts. There's a moment where he comes charging across the pitch, and I think, okay, this is really good. He's committing to a defensive action. He's miles out of space, but he's coming and he's going to make a difference. And then he doesn't really make a positive difference from a defensive, and he kind of it doesn't quite commit to it. Then they come out, and then he gives the ball away, and he compounds on it, and it's like I don't quite know where Udogie's at the minute. I feel like he's really struggling. Maybe on both sides of the game, but there were still moments in the game where he used his physicality on the edge of the box and bumping players and being physical and winning the ball, but he's not quite there, and I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's to return from the injury, whether it's going to take a while, whether he needs a rest, whether he needs minutes, but he's certainly going to get minutes because we haven't got anyone to rotate him with comfortably, certainly not on Thursday nights. So yeah, I'm interested to see what happens with Udogie, but he was doing okay until that moment, and he just needs, again, mistakes, silly bits, us doing it to ourselves. If someone comes in and plays brilliantly and scores a goal, fine, and they make chances, that is what it is, but not us shooting ourselves in the foot. It's a really, really big thing for us at the minute that we're still doing, and it's costing us. It didn't cost us last night, but it has cost us this season, and we need to improve on it. And then, yeah, we've got to finish it all off, a lovely moment to kind of round it off, and a shame that Odobert, who'd come on at this point, didn't get himself a goal. Really slick interplay around the penalty area, and a lovely first time ball from Decky. I was looking at it and I was thinking, well, Decky, you could take a touch and sweep this, but no, he decides to just provide a wall pass, so to speak, into Odobert, who's running through, and Odobert just can't quite collect off that first touch. The first touch a little bit heavy, and then as he's trying to run it through, he takes another touch. The goalkeeper does clatter through him after that ball's gone. It just goes wide of the far post, but it's kind of another 0.75. I think all told across the game we were probably due 1.5 penalties in there if you were to add them all up, on top of the one that was genuinely given. So yeah, we were maybe a bit unfortunate, but in a game like that where there wasn't a great deal of threat from the opposition, and we did get the job done, you're okay with that. But yeah, at other times, if it had been 0-0, I'd have wanted one of those, especially as the Odobert one got looked at by VAR, as I'm sure did the Maddison one. I felt that we were a bit unlucky. But end of the game, lots of changes. I think 9 changes at the beginning of the game. Players getting minutes. Berival looked okay. He looked a little bit better than he's currently looked in terms of maintaining possession, not giving it away, his passing, lovely pass of Werner that we've discussed. So that's all positive. Archie Gray, haven't talked about him. There's not a great deal to say. He just played very well. He just did his job. He was quick, he was physical, and that's really positive to see as he continues to rack up the minutes in a very quiet and composed manner. So very, very pleased with that. And then the rest of the team, despite the changes, we managed to dominate. We stayed in control. We limited the chances, even though we still made a few mistakes, which we need to eradicate. And that is across the squad, not just the team that played last night. And we got the job done. It's another victory in Europe, and we're getting closer and closer to that point where we can consider ourselves locked into that top 8, and we don't need to go through the annoying playoff round in January. So anyway, quite a long video on this one, but I felt like there was plenty to get through. So I hope you enjoyed it. Do let me know if you've got thoughts on the way that we played or tactically what we did. But again, another victory. It's a long series of victories now with the one blip against Brighton. And if this is the way our season's going to go, with, you know, growing numbers of positive blocks with the odd blip, I think that's probably where you'd expect to be in year 2 of a new project. So we're looking bang on track, and things are looking okay. So pleased with that. Anyway, have a great rest of your week, and we look forward to Crystal Palace, a London derby on Sunday, and hopefully another positive result. Take care, everyone, and come on, Tottenham.